actually JFDM.
JFDM here. Hey everybody, welcome. Thanks for joining me. So earlier we played some D&D. Maybe you remember this video where I laid out the fact that I would be running D&D for boomers, as I called it in that. My mother, her significant other, and a family friend, Maria, came over, and along with my wife, we played a one-shot of D&D. I provided pre-made characters, as I recommended in that video, and they played through, and it seemed like everyone had a great time. I was pleasantly surprised. I kind of half expected that it would just sort of be dead on arrival, which maybe that's just me being, cynical or whatever, but it worked out, and everyone seemed to have fun. They played through this relatively short adventure, and everyone said they had a good time, and they won. They defeated the bad guy at the end. There was some attempt to reason with them, so it's not even they just did what I expected. They actually engaged with trying to find other avenues to solving the problem, which was super cool. So the overview of this is that they started in this winery, of which all their characters are regulars. They're friends with the proprietor, and the party was Zelda, the dwarf cleric, played by Maria, my mother's friend. Loot Magic, played by my mother, the half-elf bard. Archie, the wood elf fighter, who was archery specialization, played by my mother's significant other, Mark. And Chili, the Goliath barbarian, played by my wife. The four of them were drinking in this tap room with the proprietor, who they were friends with, and it was the 30th anniversary of the building being constructed. And so the proprietor comes up with this special bottle of wine that's 30 years old, and they're gonna pop it open, and he gives a toast to his father and mother, whose hard work built this place. And then this Fey king appears and informs this proprietor for the first time that your father made a deal with me, and you have about 3 hours to get me what was promised. Doesn't say what was promised, doesn't say anything more than that, just 3 hours. You better bring it, otherwise that'll be thrice the deal is broken, and I get to torment your soul for eternity, basically. So the characters, this is their friend, they take it upon themselves to investigate, and they find some clues. One of the things that I wanted to sort of reference and touch on was the old movie It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, because I knew it would be something that my mother knew. And so as soon as I gave that clue, they saw it on the inside of the wine bottle's label. As soon as they saw that, and as soon as I said it out loud, it got the exact reaction I was hoping for. A lot of laughing and just having fun, so that was good. And then they're looking for this big W. Where are the big W's? Where are the big W's? And there's W's all over the place, so they start finding them. They find a bunch of journal entries under the W on this big parchment map in the tap room. There's the old tap house, so they know they have to go to the old building. So they go across the property to the old building. They get attacked by some twig and needle blights, which they handily defeat, though Archie shot one of these, and then it shot him back, and I rolled maximum damage and killed him. Killed him. I made him be dying. But they had a cleric and a bard, so one of them healing worded him, and he was fine. But there was a little bit of panic. That first time I was like, you get shot by these needles, and you go down, you're dying. That had some good tension increase there. And then so they go into the old building, find a big W, search around by it, find the entrance to this secret cellar, and then they find the door into this subterranean lair where Arlen, who is the proprietor, Arlen's father, who supposedly died 20 years ago, is still alive and is keeping this Fey King's son hostage, basically, to keep this deal going and keep the land nice. He made a deal with a different Fey, a rival to King Virtuoso, so he's sort of a warlock. They try to reason with Jeff. That's Arlen's father's name, Jeff. But the cleric, the dwarf cleric, played by Maria, says, I don't care if the vineyard fails. I just want your son Arlen to be okay. Which Jeff did all of this to ensure the success of the vineyard, because in his mind, that's what would make his son be fine. And he won't hear, he's sort of, not all there and won't hear anything other than that. So when this is said, that's his trigger to be done with the conversation and attack. So it ends up being initiative. They fight Jeff, and they destroy him. And once they destroyed Jeff, this shadowy figure I sort of narrated that there were shadows sort of swirling around Jeff, and it was sort of forming his armor. And so once they defeated Jeff, these shadows coalesce into a humanoid, and acted very impressed that they won, and offered them power and offered them a draw from his magical deck of cards, which was definitely a deck of many things. And I was really hoping they would draw from it, but all the players were like, no. Which they were wise to do. But I really tried hard to goad them into it. They didn't do it, though. So they took the child of King Virtuso back. They were a little suspicious of him, which was odd. They're like tying him up and whatever. And so when they get back to the new building, they're like, all right, well, so what, we just have to wait for Virtuso to show up? And his son Watusia was like, well, I could call him, but do you really want him to see me bound up? And they're like, okay, I guess not. And the barbarian, played by my wife, is like, okay, well, I just stand there with my axe like this. I was like, okay. So they release him. He, calls his father. And when his father shows up, he's got like the sort of same face that he had on when he initially delivered sort of the ultimatum of this whole thing. This almost desire for vengeance, but as soon as he sees his son free and can embrace him, that all breaks away, and he's just grateful. So they succeeded, and at the end, they were asking when they could play again. So maybe we'll run a follow-up adventure. I mean, we sort of planted a lot of seeds of another entity in the Fae, this sort of rivalry between these two this Fae king and I guess a rival. I'm trying to think of a different word, can't think of one. That's fine. This shadowy entity within the Fae that doesn't like the king. And so, yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll cook something up and I'll run for them again. And I told them, yeah, hey, if we do play again, then you'll be level 2 next time, which means you'll be able to do more stuff, and you'll have more hit points and more abilities. They were already definitely a little overwhelmed by the character sheet and everything on it. I tried to simplify it as much as possible, removed all the superfluous stuff that wasn't really going to come into play in a one shot, and just really tried to make it as basic as possible. But even still, it's a lot going on, so I think the idea that there might be more going on in a second level character sheet sort of was like, oh, but I don't know. I guess we'll see. See what happens. Yeah, thanks all for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this little update about this game and this experience. I would say, if for whatever reason your parents or older people in your life, if you're someone that's my age who's, I'm in my 30s, if you have parents or older people who never played this, have only ever heard about it, or were interested in learning, you should definitely run a game for them. I mean, it was fun. I was pleasantly surprised with how much they engaged with it and tried to do things that were, just outside of the, paper buttons on the character sheet. They weren't just like looking down at the character sheet and being like, what can I do? They were trying to actually think about it and engage. So that was good. I think it worked well, and you should try and do this too if you have the opportunity. So thank y'all for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.